Hey guys, Brandon Lewis here with the Tennessee Conservative. Somebody stopped by the house, Gary Humble. Wasn't unannounced. We had talked about getting together to do some fun, manly things like hike a trail, eat a steak, have a strong drink, things of that nature that really, manly men would do. And we did that because we are both doing something that is unique in the volunteer state, and that is primarily advocating for your average GOP primary voter, which, believe it or not, has very little voice in media, has very little voice in advocacy. Yet we represent those folks. So I always appreciate what you do. It is always encouraging not to be the only person in this fight, although we have grassroots folks all over the state, but in an organized statewide fashion in an organization that has reach. So thank you for stopping by, buddy.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's always good coming up the mountain. And I've heard you say this before, and I think it's true. You know, the voters you talk about, these conservative voters, the conservative base is, I think, much more conservative than we see, going on up in the state legislature. So I think that voice and that representation in terms of the things that the base cares about is important. And hopefully, the more we're able to have that conversation, the more we can move the needle up in Nashville. So, because again, I've been all over the state, and I do think, hands down, we probably have the most, if not absolutely one of the most conservative states. You just don't necessarily see that play out in our state legislature.
I'm in complete agreement. I've seen the data. You've seen the data. You and I have swam in it for 5 years plus. And I can't believe we're here at 5 years plus. So I'd like to get in the Wayback Machine and talk to you about how I met Gary. First, I'm going to tell you how I found him, and then he may have to tell you how we met when we met the first time. But I found you online on the inner tubes because God knows in 2020 we couldn't physically go out and meet people. We couldn't do it in the traditional sense, so we were all locked in our houses. And I was looking around and I was like, I think this is kind of strange that for the first time in American history, we have shut down churches. We have told people that medical devices that were previously determined to be ineffective with similar diseases are now functional, that vaccines that had proved not to work during previous flu-like situations because of the transformation of the disease were now going to work, and that businesses were shut down, but some were allowed to be open. So it seemed like we were living in bizarro world. And there were only a very small number of people in Tennessee, maybe 4 or 5 out of 100, that were like, this is completely wrong. The propaganda is all well and good, but we don't believe it. We look at historical data. We look at the information that's coming at us. So I got online and I found that there were only 2 or 3 people in the entire freaking state of Tennessee that thought that it wasn't normal. Everybody else is like, oh, this is great. This is the best thing we've ever done. We all got to hang, we're in this together. We're in this together. Stay safe. And, but there was you, Andy Ogles, and later to a lesser degree, but any voice is helpful, Glenn Jacobs. I was like, okay, here's 2 or 3 guys that are actually making a stink about this. I need to meet them because I want to make a stink about it as well. And then I found you through your work at Tennessee Stands. You were 3 months ahead of me, 2 months.
Something like that. Yeah, we were right. We all jumped in there towards the beginning.
Yes. So do you remember when we actually met in person? Was it one of your events, maybe?
Brandon, I don't really know the first time we met. I don't know. We
apparently I don't make much of an impression.
Well, no, we've been around so many times. I'm trying to think back 5 years, like when it was. I think it was one of your events. Could be, but you had an event in Nashville where I remember myself, Robin Steenman. You had given out some initial awards. I can't remember. Was it Flame Awards? I don't know if that was the first time we met in person or not. Feels like we would have met before then, but I don't know.
Yeah, but we primarily over the phone, and there were some patriots, folks that had common sense. And it's interesting to me when you look at all these smart people that we're supposed to follow that all got it wrong. And they're very angry at us for pointing out that they got it wrong. And then further telling you that they got it wrong and reminding you that these people are still in
The
power.
unfortunate thing about that whole season is it's you realize how quickly everything is about leadership. And that's honestly, again, I'm not getting into legislative analysis here, but that's what you see in the legislature. I mean, everything is about leadership. There was a point in time whenever I started this that I thought, you know what, we need to blow the whole thing up. It all sucks. We need to replace all 132 of them. These people are worthless. Let's just flip every seat. As I've been in this now a few years, I've actually realized, there really, and I'm speaking to the even the SEC and the Republican Party and see in the General Assembly, there are some really good men and women there. Unfortunately, as humanity is, everything that you have the ability to do rises and falls in leadership. And what I've come to recognize now is you really don't have to blow the whole thing up. You change the leadership structure right now in the General Assembly, which is, what are we talking about? 6, 7, 8 people maybe, and that whole thing is different. I mean, it functions completely differently, with just changing that leadership structure. And so, that, I mean, honestly, for me, like, that makes me a little bit more hopeful in our ability to move the needle and to see things happen. But it's unfortunate. I think I was saying that because when you look back at COVID, you can see the. I don't think everybody was wearing masks. I remember going to the grocery store, and I'm like I'm the only person not wearing a mask. I had so many parents calling me. Their kids are going to school, and their child is like the only one willing to not wear a mask, in the entire class. But that was all because of leadership, and it's really unfortunate. During that period of time, we had no one, almost, in elected office that was willing to stand up for the Constitution, stand up for the truth, stand up against this agenda that was coming against us. And but that's where we are. That's Tennessee leadership, and it needs to change. It needs to change dramatically.
Well, it's interesting. You think about it. That's the strongest wind that has ever blown, and folks didn't have the conservative moorings to stay anchored. And you think, okay, well, if they moved in such a nonsensical fashion, imagine what happens when calmer breezes blow on other issues that are not conservative, if a little bit of money is put behind them.
Mm-hmm.
And what you see is those same folks drift the same way, not as far, but they continue to drift on key issues that conservatives care about. So let me ask you this. You've been at this for 5 years. I've been at this for 5 years plus. And I did it out of a knee-jerk reaction. I was like, this is not right. This is completely inappropriate. Like, this is not, like, every fiber of my being. Like, I just switched everything I was doing. I almost kind of lost sight of what made me money in my business, because I'm like, is someone not going to stand up and freaking make a stink about this? Is someone not going to represent everyone else who's muttering to their neighbors on the street that this is not correct? So what, 5 years into it, what would you tell people that they may not know, or kind of a broader view of what you've discovered working in this space of advocacy, trying to get leadership and Republicans really, for the most part, just simply aligned with the people that voted for them in the primary?
That's a loaded question. I would say it is. So a lot of people that do advocacy, in my opinion, from what I've observed, their view of advocacy is doing the best they can to garner relationships, which includes money and compromise and all sorts of things, in order to push a certain agenda. And at the end of the day, for some of these policy organizations, what am I trying to? It's an ends justifies the means situation. So they will do anything and everything humanly possible in order to achieve the end goal of getting this policy passed. But what happens oftentimes is, in that, and when we saw that. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, because good Lord, I've talked about school vouchers more than I've wanted to in my lifetime. That's a great example of a lot of really good conservative legislators that have a differing opinion, but were being obliterated and destroyed publicly by your rhino hack radio stations and special interest groups. And, people like Frank Nicely. I mean, one of our most conservative legislators in Tennessee history. I mean, rock solid. You got out of state PACs that care about one issue. And because this guy disagrees with them on that singular issue, they're willing to completely take him out, run $500,000 worth of TV ads, painting him as the problem as if he's the guy that opened the southern border. I mean, I wish they're on YouTube. I mean, honestly, go on YouTube and search these 2024 commercials on Frank Nicely. You would swear the dude literally was under orders from Joe Biden to go to the border and bus illegals to Tennessee. I mean, that's the picture they painted. And unfortunately, we have an electorate that is largely uninformed. And when you've got that much money being poured into a local primary, and you've got uninformed voters who unfortunately aren't reading Tennessee conservative news and don't know about Tennessee stands, well, they just think Frank Nicely is this terrible guy that they've got to get rid of. And that's the worst thing that I've seen. And I don't know, because I wasn't in. You have a little bit of history, a lot more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I did nothing political before 5 years ago. I mean, first 15 years of my adult life, I was in the church. I was a Bible college graduate. I was a worship pastor, executive pastor for a while. Went into business, did some different things. I was never involved in politics. I was one of the people that just got pissed off in 2020. And so I don't know that I was fully prepared. I thought that I was walking into a scenario where I would have legitimate policy debates with people that cared about policy. That was I think most people think, well, gosh, they're serving in the legislature. These people do this every day. They must care. Like they must really know the Constitution. Like, that's how you view these people in leadership. Well, that's not at all the case. In fact, I would say a great many of them could care less about so many care about position and not the policy. And so when that's the case, in order to preserve their position, forget the policy. They'll do anything to destroy some of the most conservative members of the legislature, all to preserve their own power and position. And so unfortunately, it's a nasty, nasty business. And I see really, really, when someone with a lot of character and principle walks into that place, and I won't name names, but they struggle. It's very difficult for them to be in that environment day in and day out, because you quickly realize, gosh, I think like I did, naivete, right? I thought I could come in here and just have like policy discussions. It's not about policy discussions.
It's special interest. And even from day one, when a freshman goes in there in the Senate or the House, I call it hazing, adult hazing. Went through a fraternity, which unfortunately at the time, did all that stuff. But I have seen how organizations and folks that come into fraternal organizations, there's a, what would you call it, a ritual, and then there's a rite, and even going through orientation, here's some administrative bills. Here's some things that won't make any difference. We'll make you feel good about passing them. Oh, go get this lobbyist luncheon. Go over here. We're going to feed you a steak dinner. You never had one of those? Oh, you've never had a $200 bottle of whatever? Okay, we're going to do all this. And so they get you in there, and then they bribe, cajole, and slowly but surely separate you from your constituency so that you can align with the special interests that have funded their campaigns for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And so it has been tough. People go up there, I would say, in many cases, a strong R, and then they turn into they just slowly but surely kind of go toward the middle and then a little bit to the left. What are some of the biggest surprises both positive and negative, that you have seen in the last 5 years? Things that you're like, I think that was some pretty good policy. I'm glad we're moving in this direction. Or, wow, what a fumble. Let's talk about some of the biggest ones.
Yeah, going back. So I'll just because in historical order, I think the biggest disappointment in the first fumble was the special session in 2021 for COVID. We had finally the if you remember, the governor flat refused to call a special session to deal with the emergency. In fact, the week before we had the special session, he called a session to give $1 billion to Ford.
I know, it's the worst, the worst thing I've ever seen. Your people are suffering. You put 25% of small businesses out of business in Tennessee.
But yeah, we've got to have all of your representatives who are supposed to represent you. We've got to have them all come in so we can give Ford $1 billion.
Yes. Which now wait a minute. They've been doing really good with their electrical car division. They've only lost about $2 billion, $2.5 billion a year every year. Doesn't that seem like something? And if we could put money, if we could take Tennessee taxpayer money, and if we could put all that money in a venture that's already consistently losing $2.5 billion, I think it's going to turn around.
And in addition to a product now being delayed to 2027. And needing an additional $9.2 billion grant from the U.S. Department of Energy.
I am quite certain that they will turn it all around, and you, the Tennessee taxpayer, will finally get, all those representatives and state reps that voted for that, and senators, like, you're going to get your money back. That was a complete waste of money. But yes, they half measures, things of that nature.
But as disappointing as it was, though, to see the governor not call that session, the General Assembly did call themselves in for only the third time in Tennessee state history. But the problem was we got in to deal with legislation that would protect individuals from the COVID Nazi tyranny that was going on, where, if you didn't get this shot, you could lose your livelihood. And at the time, you've got Joe Biden. This was 21. So Joe Biden had made these threats and executive orders ensuring that federal contractors comply with vaccine mandates. At the time, the threat was on the table that an OSHA regulation was going to come down, where if you had 100 or more employees, everybody had to get the shot, all this sort of crazy stuff. And in the midst of all of that, you have this was, again, follow me here, you had a supermajority Republican legislature who should have done everything they do to give Biden the hand and push back against these unconstitutional executive orders. But instead, what we did was we restricted employers from mandating a shot from COVID in the state of Tennessee unless you were a federal contractor or a healthcare worker provider. So what we did was we said the Tennessee legislature is going to exercise our constitutional authority to protect you, unless you work for a company that is getting paid by the federal government. And so in that case, we're going to carve you out. You're screwed. We're not going to go to bat for you. And if Uncle Joe wants to give you the shot, well, by golly, we're sorry, you've got to take it.
Or if you're a National Guardsman or anything like that, like just, you're not, you don't get the same protections under the Tennessee Constitution with Bill Lee and Cameron Sexton and Randy McNally as everyone else, which is, and by that time, honestly, to be fair, I think almost anybody with any guts to refuse that had already been fired.
Yep.
By the time Bill Lee and Sexton and McNally got around to slowly realizing what any idiot could have seen from day one, I think, personally. I mean, it didn't take, like, on the bridge 2020, April, Market Street Bridge, I'm like, this is BS. We're having a protest. What kind of moron cannot see that
at
this
30 days when the message changes from flatten the curve to whatever it was next? I mean, you should have seen it.
Yes,
right there,
yes.
Right
The lack of discernment. It says in the Bible, when there are emergencies, times of tribulation, you need men that have discernment, and we didn't have any, unfortunately. Fast forward, 2 or 3 years, Tennessee Titans stadium funding. which is wildly unpopular. Like 65% of Tennesseans, Democrat and Republican, are like, that's a waste of money.
Mm-hmm.
And they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. It's like, imagine small business owners never get. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never gotten anything from the state government. Bill Lee's never said, oh, small business owners, thank you. But the corporations always get your money as a small business owner to fund them. In many cases, your competitors. The biggest one I think is like crazy to me. It's like Whataburger. These people serve hamburgers. Hamburgers.
Or in and out.
Anything, any of that crap. We're going to move our corporate headquarters. Oh, mom and pop, you've been here serving hamburgers for 20, 30 years. You got 3 or 4 locations. Hey, don't worry. We're going to take your money so that these people that compete against you.
We're going to bring in your competitor.
We're going to bring in your competitor.
With your money, with your tax dollars.
And conservatives like support that.
Mm-hmm.
Not conservatives.
Oh, I love
Republicans.
Oh yeah, well, because we love In and Out. And we love the double. So yeah, let's bring them in. I mean, it makes no sense.
It is a bizarro world.
But fast forward, so something good. I think fast forward to 2023. I think, and I in my opinion, one of the strongest things that I've seen our General Assembly do is whenever they tackled what was happening at Vanderbilt and with the child mutilation bill, and of course there was the drag bill, which was I think a big deal as well. But I think dealing with that and you got to shade that a little bit because look, Vanderbilt is powerful in the General Assembly. I mean, the medical lobby is the most powerful lobby we have in Tennessee.
Well, Frank nicely said, so over the years that the most influential, powerful lobbies in the legislature changed. He said, I remember it was educators for a while, and then it was blah blah blah, and then and here recently he said it's the medical community.
100%. So to see in 2023 our leadership in many ways actually go against the grain, and
a lot of that had to do, which is
being put on the spot with the Daily Wire.
Put on the spot with the Daily Wire.
Yeah.
I don't know if Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro or anybody, hey, if you know them personally and you want to forward this email to them so that they don't like me, feel free to do it. But it makes me mad that we have conservative national pundits that live in our state that freaking fled from their shitholes where they probably weren't involved previously to move here because they didn't get involved previously, and then now they've moved here and they're making a bunch of money commenting on national stuff, which they have virtually no control over and no influence over, and they're just as silent here for the most part. I've not heard a peep from anybody of any significance this whole legislative session, and so it just bothers me that we have these conservative conglomerates that are in our state, and they are telling their constituents to go be conservative, happy warriors in their state and local government, but they aren't doing it.
They're not willing to be the happy warriors here themselves. Yeah.
No, it has been very disappointing. I thought, oh, thank goodness. Oh, look, Matt Walsh talked about something for 15 minutes, and it made a big change. Well, maybe somebody would talk about illegal immigration for 15 minutes.
That's a great point.
Maybe somebody would talk about something else for 15 minutes. Imagine, like in this magical world where you live with us, if you would get engaged. I understand there's no money to be made. I don't make my money doing this because there's no money to be made doing this, but there's a ton of political return to be made. I doubt anybody in national media could point at anything in Congress that their individual reporting changed completely. But in state government, often you can.
You know what, by the way, I love that accusation that oftentimes you and I get, that clearly we're rebel rousers and we're rolling in the dough because of all the trouble we make, and so we're the ultimate grifters. And what's funny is, like you say, you would think, right, that if there was so much money to be made and this was such a revenue generator, that a lot of other people would be doing it.
Oh yeah, no, we just
wouldn't we have like insane competition of people trying to get in on
me and you
all the money they're making?
Yes,
I mean, we got to get in on that.
We have a monopoly on the massive amounts of money that are coming.
And how we've been able to accomplish that, I'll never know. But apparently, no one else wants to do it.
Well, here's the thing. I coach painting contractors for a living. That's how I make my money. Because in painting and politics and the press, you're always trying to cover something up. So it's all the same. And so I talk to our guys all the time. Oh, there's too much competition. There's too much competition. There's too much competition. I said, there's only competition where there's money. And the reason there's only one conservative news alternative and only one statewide advocacy organization is because there's not much money. There's not much money. If there was a bunch of money, you'd see 15 of us.
Yep.
And so going on and talking about that, one of my biggest frustrations over the last 5 years is just simply the fact that, and I'll just be frank with you, as people watch this interview with you and I would say only 10% of the people that watch this video consistently give. And the rest of them are pretty much on a free ride.
That's a high estimate.
They've never donated. Very rarely. They're not engaged, at least in state and local. And so what is it, do you think, makes conservative Christians sit on the sideline with their money, both in state and local campaigns and in advocacy and the media?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I blame myself because I was talking to some folks about this the other day. Like we don't ask. I rarely ask for money. Number one, because I don't like to, and I'm a terrible fundraiser. And I think maybe somewhat because of that, and I try to put myself on the outside looking in. I think folks a lot of times see an organization running and operating, and they think, well, somebody's funding it. Like they must, like, is it, well, you look at some of these.
Well, that'd be like if you went to church and you said, well, somebody's obviously giving.
Somebody's giving.
Somebody's giving some money.
I think that's true though. I think that's a human response. I mean, I remember, I worked in the church for 15 years. And so I've been in all those conversations. And, when you go to a church leadership conference or whatnot, you learn John Maxwell always talks about the Pareto principle. That 20% of people do 80% of the work. 20% of the people give 80% of the money. So that 80-20 principle holds true in the church. It holds true in every nonprofit I've been around. So I just think there's always a human perception that we have that, well, clearly this thing is running and someone else is doing the work. Great. I'm happy to thank you, but the truth is, the only reason that we've been able to do this for 5 years at the level that we have is because we have several, tons of people across Tennessee that just, they may give $5, $20 a month. Some give $100 a month, a couple a little bit more, but it's mostly small dollar donations, and folks that have really bought into what we do and just kind of keep us afloat. If everyone that actually, to forget people that read our emails, if the thousands of people that actually engage and send advocacy emails gave $5 a month, I'd never have to dream about asking for money ever again. We would be able to do so many things in this state just by such a small financial participation from the people that participate in what we do. But I don't get mad about it. I think because
I do, Gary.
Yeah, well, I've lived.
Damn it, I do. I've been doing this for free for 5.5 years, and I'm like, you bastards, get off your wallet. Like
But the problem expands. The problem expands, right? I think I've heard you say this a lot. It's not just what we're doing. News organizations, it's conservative candidates, and honestly, that's where you really see the pain point play out, because you have conservatives across the state that are trying to run against, insanely well-funded establishment candidates. Oftentimes, for example, again, just to bring up school choice, because it just happened, we had a 2024 election. And I'll just tell you, in my own county, in Williamson County, we had DC special interest PACs that dumped $1.2 million into a Tennessee House race that's like 1/3 of Williamson County. How do you pour $1.2 million into 1/3 of a county? That's insane. I don't know if that's ever happened in Tennessee history, maybe. My point in that is the kind of firepower that grassroots candidates have to go up against when they run. And oftentimes they're doing it with like $10,000, and if they just really went out there and did it, they might have raised $40,000, maybe on the high end. So I think a lot of people just need to be aware that this the old saying, many hands make light work.
Yes, it does.
And when you've got, organizations like ours, and it's not just Tennessee Stands and Tennessee Conservative News, there are lots of grassroots organizations that are trying to do things across
Even
the state.
your local party, if it's conservative,
Absolutely.
in many cases it's not. It's just,
You should absolutely be financially supporting local Republican parties that are fighting for conservative values.
Yeah.
They need your support.
Yes, and candidates and little bitty clubs. I mean, it always drives me nuts that these conservative organizations. I mean, every single one of them. I cannot name a well-funded conservative organization in the state of Tennessee.
No, there isn't one.
What?
There isn't.
I mean,
one.
I know it, but it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, special interest, tons of money.
Yeah.
Corporate interest, tons of money. Medical interest, tons of
Yeah,
money.
the DC groups that are here, they're well funded.
Yeah,
but
left leaning, tons of money. Conservative, we are working. We are a church. We are write a check, swap a credit card. Thought never crossed my mind. This must be a scam. Whatever it is, I'm like, guys, somebody has got to figure this out. Transitioning, shifting gears, because resources is important. What do you see coming up? Obviously, just as you, I feel like perhaps this isn't the case. You focus a lot more on medical freedom and education issues, me to a degree, but legal immigration is like one of the main things we focus on, simply because
it's something you've always been.
I've always focused on, because nobody else focuses on it, and God knows nobody wants to be called all the names that I've been called every time that I talk about this issue. But I have been encouraged this last year, disappointed and encouraged.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of both.
By the move on legal immigration. It broke my heart to watch the Trump Act get killed. I mean, we don't have Republicans in the state of Tennessee that want to define what a Tennessee citizen is. Not an illegal alien. What?
Yeah.
That is controversial. We got to struggle on that.
Yeah.
And we had our own issue here in Hamilton County where there was a resolution brought by the school board, which is predominantly Republican, and 3 of the Republicans vote with the Democrats to give illegal aliens taxpayer-funded education for free. And then 3 Republicans decide not to even vote and abstain, and then the motion carries. Yet when you poll them, and I did at my own expense, 78% of GOP primary voters are like, So I'm like, how in the world have we gotten to a point, and I think I know what it is, low information, lots of money from special interest, etc. But it just amazes me as I look at folks like Freddie O'Connell in Nashville.
Insane.
Who freaking completely, totally, 100% goes to bat for his wacko Democrat base. Even perhaps at his own personal detriment.
Yep.
And maybe even like lawsuits, or maybe even being arrested.
Well, on that note, thanks to Congressman Andy Ogles, for recently calling for a federal investigation into his actions on refusing, or actually in some cases using tax dollars now, to work to harbor illegals from federal enforcement.
Yes, well, I know a judge recently was arrested for that. So maybe Freddie.
Why can't you arrest the mayor?
Why can't you arrest the mayor? If you can arrest a federal judge, you can probably arrest the mayor.
Yep.
And so you look at it. Bothers me to watch the Democrats when they get in power. They freaking go to bat for their constituents, and then our guys go up there, and it's like as soon as the special interests start giving them some money, and as soon as leadership starts telling them to not represent their constituents, boy, they fold like a wet paper bag.
Yeah, and
they just. I mean, it amazes me to see Democrats. I wish I was a Democrat. Well, at least I know. I mean, they may not win, but if they do, they might do what I sent them to do.
So what's going to happen is the folks out there are gonna clip that piece.
Oh, good grief! Yes,
and we're going to play that over and over again. Where Brandon says, "I wish I was a Democrat." I'm just going to play that on.
And then also, what is it? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again because I don't care, because I'm never running for office. You clip it all you want to. Good luck. Have fun with it. Where is it? Mark Harrison, who's just a complete tool bag here in Hamilton County, that ran our Republican Party. When I say ran our Republican Party, ran it into the ground. Raised a bunch of money, spent it on useless overhead, and then never did anything of any significance. But nonetheless, I've often said, and I'll say it again for his benefit, I feel like if we had more Democrats in the General Assembly, the Republicans might actually vote with their base because they're afraid that they might not get elected. But right now, folks are people think, okay, I've moved to Tennessee, it's all okay.
Yep.
It's all okay. And then folks that are refugees in particular from the blue states that fled here, which are far more passionate than our native population as far as being, I would say, outspoken and engaged on making sure our state doesn't move in that direction. They're like, no, I saw the same stuff happen in our state, and it happened exactly the same way. Soft R's, soft R's, soft R's, weak R's, purple, and then light D, solid D.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid we're going to head in that direction.
Super majorities can be dangerous. I mean, a great example of the difference between like Tennessee and how Congress operates. So remember, was it a year ago now or a year and a half ago? I can't remember when we ousted Kevin McCarthy and of course ended up with Mike Johnson. But at the time during that speaker vote, you recall there were a group of 20 conservatives, part of the Freedom Caucus, that was holding up the whole deal. And the reason is because Republicans have a majority by and at the time, what was it, 2 seats, 3 seats? I mean, it's a little bit larger now, but you don't have a supermajority. Republicans barely have a majority. So what happens in that case? Well, these 20 firebrand conservatives, because of the slim majority, actually have a voice.
Yes.
And because they refuse to vote a certain way, those 20 men and women are able to hold up the entire election for the speaker. I mean, you bring that scenario into Tennessee. Well, that doesn't exist.
No.
When 80% of your legislature is the Republican Party, well, then those 6 or 7, or how many do we have? Maybe 8 or 9, maybe really strong conservatives. Well, they have no voice because the remainder of the party, and especially all the chairmen and everybody that's got something to lose, that is subservient to leadership. Well, those conservatives get outvoted. They have no ability, to really have a voice and put a stop to the process and do anything meaningful, because there's such a majority of Republicans that the rest of them will just outvote them. So that's sort of an interesting distinction between, because you would think that having a supermajority is what you want, and that, for example, like you were saying earlier, we had a couple of wins, but some big disappointments in illegal immigration. Well, why in the hell in Tennessee, when you've got 80% of the legislature, would the Republicans not have done everything we can do on illegal immigration?
Yeah.
You've got Trump in the White House. You own the legislature lock, stock, and barrel. Well, why wouldn't you just go gangbusters and pass all of it? Well, because you realize that all of your R's in the supermajority are not actually conservative. And because we have a supermajority.
I would say they're not even conservative. They're not Republican.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me back up here. First, Mr. Harrison, this is why I make those statements. It's a tactical political thing, none of which, folks typically understand that aren't politically effective. But so that's the first thing, right? So you back up and you look at the polling on these issues. And sometimes they're like, oh, I'm just not a conservative Republican, but I'm a Republican. But you poll the Republican primary voters, and it's like, no, you're not.
They want you to pass these bills.
Yes, but it's not even conservative. It's just bland, moderate Republicanism. When you survey people and 80% say don't fund illegal immigrant education, that's not conservative. You could even say it's moderate.
Mhm.
When 80% of your base says something,
Yeah, that's big tent. That's not
it's big tent, baby.
Yeah.
And now for some reason,
So pass the bill.
For some reason, when the 20% disagrees with the 80%, it's not big tent.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the 45% disagree with the 60%, like on corporate welfare issues, that's big tent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what?
But when you get 80%, though,
yes, not big tent. But when you got 40, we got 45%, 40%, that's big
true.
tent. And so it amazes me. It's
That's
like
true.
they're always like, well, it's a but when it's like a purely non-negotiable issue, anyway, it's what it is. So what do you see happening in Tennessee state government? Education. Honestly, this is my personal opinion. You may or may not disagree. I don't think government education is ever going to get any better. That's just my personal opinion. I don't care unless there's some kind of. I look at the apparatus. I look at the incentive structure as someone who runs a school for a living. I look at how the teachers are compensated, what the rules are, what the administrative structure is, what little money makes it into the classroom, low parent participation. Like if you put everything that government education has going for it, and you remove the word government education, and you said that they were a fast food restaurant, everyone would say, well, this thing ain't ever gonna make it. Shut this thing down. Turn it down. Is you're spending $10,000 to make $1,000 worth of hamburgers? Shut it down. But then you say it's government education, and everybody's like, oh no, wait.
Yeah.
Oh no, wait. This is the kids and the parents. Then it turns into this big emotional kumbaya fest. But if you said it was anything else other than teachers and kids, people would say that is a losing proposition. So I don't know that it can necessarily be reformed, but it has been a rough 5 years for government education in Tennessee. In my opinion, we've seen, to my knowledge, no academic performance increases. We've seen increases in spending. But I mean, what's on pace for that? Because we spend 50-60% of our budget on it, so shouldn't it be doing a little better?
I think it's, dude. I just think it's leadership. Like I don't disagree with what you're saying, but the problem is I can't camp there because the reality. Government schools. If you want to just stick with that terminology, they're not going away. I mean, it would be great if we could have a revolution in society where we just have a complete paradigm shift on how we live and reorder society, reorder the 5-day work week and the family structure, and just reorder to where we can educate our kids at home, or we go back to some sort of
God knows they'd have to do what me and you do.
Yeah, well, I know. But that's difficult, and I don't. I acknowledge that not everyone's situation necessarily allows for that, but that's also because it's the way society is structured. So no matter what we do and what we promote and how much we talk about homeschool freedom, which is important to me, and we've got to have that, the great majority of students for the next conceivable few decades at least are going to be in public schools. So it bothers me that somehow we can't figure out how to get this under control. And I think this is an important point to make because I got poo-pooed a lot because of by the special interest groups, because during the school choice debate, I kept bringing up the point that, look, this whole idea that the teachers' unions are too powerful and schools suck because of the left and the union influence. I'm like, I get that the unions have had a negative influence, but they're not the power brokers. I mean, the real power brokers is the General Assembly.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is, when you just go back to the basics and the Constitution and law, and I think it's important for people to understand, and I don't know that I could really get this point home, but I've got a great example to give that's happening right now. School districts, per our Constitution and by law, school districts only exist because the legislature has created them. A position of a superintendent only exists because the powers and duties of a superintendent are expressly defined by the General Assembly. The powers and duties of what a school board, an elected body, is able to do is strictly prescribed by the General Assembly. So when you think about who's in the driver's seat, who has the ability to use policy to control outcomes and control how our public schools operate, it's not the local school board, it's not your superintendent, it is the General Assembly. They set the table. Well, it's like, well, Gary, you just don't understand, that everything happens at the local level. So get this. After all that naysaying against what I was putting out there, wouldn't you know, Memphis schools are performing so bad that, which they are, that local people in Memphis are requesting, and I think this effort is being led by Senator Brent Taylor, who I think I appreciate. He's fighting for his city. He's doing some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing some much needed stuff.
I would say, hey, listen,
the guy's fighting for his hometown.
Yes, he is.
Good on him.
He is doing what Republicans should be doing, which is making a stink about problems their constituents are bringing to them: criminal justice in Brent's case, and education.
But so here's the deal. So right now they're requesting from the state, and it seems like the leadership is going to do this. And in fact, I think they should in this case. But they're going to abolish. They're going to remove the local school district in Memphis, and the state, at least for an interim period, the state is going to take over the Memphis school system to sort of right the ship. So they think. I don't know how that's going to go. That may not go very well. But my point is, so you're telling me that the state, I mean, get this, you're arguing that we need to put tax dollars into private education and we need school choice because the teachers unions are horrible and the state has no power to fix the public schools, but yet the state has the power to delete an entire school district and take it over. But they don't have the power to fix what's broken in the 100 and some odd public school districts that we have that they rule and reign over in Tennessee. So you can destroy them and remove them out of existence, but you don't have the power to fix them.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
What's actually happening is you don't want to fix them. What's actually happening is no one is coming up with the right solutions to actually take the bull by the horns and go into the place and use the authority that we have as a supermajority and fix the issues. Why can't we, it's after 2 years, why can't we get a freaking gay flag out of a classroom? Why is that hard? Why is it so hard to tell a teacher you can't hang a gay flag in the classroom?
You would think.
But somehow nobody has the power to do that because of the First Amendment. But they can erase the entire school system. I don't understand that logic. But the bottom line is...
Well, and when the important votes come to do such a thing...
Oh, they're all about it.
Randy McNally...
We're going to fix it.
Randy McNally is over there voting with the Democrats to keep the gay flag in the Tennessee schools. And Ken Yeager and everybody else in the Tennessee Senate, they inconveniently have to be somewhere else where they can't vote. So there's only one Republican in there in the chamber, and 2 abstain, and 4 or 5 take a walk.
Some other important meeting going on down the
Oh,
hall.
yeah. And so all this stuff, and we saw this on many issues. We saw committee votes this session, which is just a procedural issue, but I watch this all the time. They use it. It's like, oh, I got to be in this committee to go vote on something that doesn't make a difference, that my constituents don't care about, that's not a core issue. If Cameron Sexton and Randy McNally cannot run the General Assembly from an operational standpoint to the point where the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 issues for GOP primary voters can't have folks in the room to freaking vote because they're voting on tertiary bullcrap stuff over here somewhere else, then y'all are terrible managers.
Yep.
Bring me in there. I got an Excel sheet. We can take a calendar out. I can fix this problem in about 15 minutes. And so it just drives me nuts. But it's, at the end of the day, though, it's not operational incompetence. It's their sheer will to completely thumb their nose at the people that have sent them to represent them.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, okay, you're voting against 80%, 70% of your constituents. Do you not have some kind of mechanism as a politician to be able to reach out to your people and get a gauge on what the F it is they actually want you to do? No, don't have that ability. Can't figure it out. Then you're incompetent. You should go do something else.
Yeah.
How can I figure it out, but you can't? But I think in the end, you know it and I know it. That's not what they went up there to do to begin with. That's not what they're going to continue to do. Like, they're there to either enrich themselves, empower themselves, to be recognized at pancake suppers, or what the heck ever else it is. But they're not there just to go up and be, I would say, the stewards of the policy that the folks sent them to do. So what's on your mind?
Well, I know we're pushing for time, but I do want to say, like I think something I would want to put forward in this interview is that I want to encourage people, because I've noticed when we talked about engagement earlier, whenever, and it's just, again, human nature. So Trump gets elected into office, right? And I mean, you can just feel it. It's like the wind got sucked out of the room. People's engagement just sort of goes down, and all the metrics just start ticking down. Why? Well, because we solved the problem. Trump's in the White House, and so we don't need to worry about anything anymore. We're just going to go back to our lives. Everything's going to be okay. That's a really bad way to be, because that's probably been the most difficult, and I know you're doing the same thing. That's been the most difficult thing that I've had to do running Tennessee Stands, is trying to get people to shift their focus from what's happening in the White House to what's happening in the State House. Yep. And that is bar none the hardest part of what we do, because what's sexy is what's happening in Congress, and that's what people want to see, what's happening with Doge and what's Trump doing in the White House. But some of the most important things that you and I are going to live with are happening right here at home.
It'd almost be like if you said, "Oh, my house is on fire. I don't care. I heard my neighbor's house got put out, and that's great." Well, I mean, but what's happening closer to home?
Yeah.
What problems are right there on your doorstep you could actually influence? So I'm completely with you, but and a lot of it is this very simple fact that we don't have enough organizations in Tennessee. I'm going to say this, and I don't know if it does me any favors, that are telling people who the heroes and the villains are relative to their policy positions. Whereas at the federal level, you've got thousands of pundits and talking heads that are informing people on that. But at the state government level, I mean, most people don't really even know, like, who's on my side, who's not on my side, who's representing me. And so they vote in ignorance or because of personal relationships, but the policies simply don't represent them.
But big picture, there's a paradigm shift that needs to happen. Instead of the thinking being, well, Trump's in office, so everything's good. What I think that voters should expect right now out of Tennessee is that, well, by golly, we do have a reprieve. We've got Trump in office, and so from the federal government, we've got an opportunity. So in my view, every state right now, and red states especially should be paying attention. Every state right now has an opportunity to start pulling the trigger on everything conservative that they can possibly do to shore up their state in this current reprieve that we've been given from the federal government.
Exactly.
And organize ourselves in such a way, because here's the thing, the pendulum will swing. Like, that who knows if Trump, I don't know if this whole third term thing is real or not, whatever. But let's just say, Trump's done, and maybe we get, I don't know if Eric Trump's going to run, J.D. Vance, whoever's going to be, and let's say we get him for another 4 years, 8 years, and God willing, maybe we get like 12 years of conservative leadership in the White House. But you can bet everything you have in the bank that pendulum will swing back. So my point is, while we are enjoying, what does Trump call it? This is the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
So while we are enjoying the golden age, let's get stuff done in Tennessee.
It amazes me.
Let's codify everything we can right now.
When Democrats get power, they They look to their constituents.
They run hard.
They say, we're going to ram everything down the throats of everyone else that we conceivably can.
As fast as possible.
As fast as possible. Katie bar the door. And then when Republicans get in, it's like
crickets.
It's crickets. It's like, we are going to do... I mean, up until Trump, honestly, federally speaking, it has been the most limp-wristed, barely do anything. Like in 2 or 3 or 4 years, you might get 2 or 3 decent pieces of legislation. The rest of it's just passing the buck. They can't even put a budget together. A budget. Like very functional, basic line item budget stuff. They've barely been able. I don't know that we've not had a true budget in how long?
I don't know about that. I don't follow that closely, but I do know that's one of the complaints right now, isn't it? That Trump is moving on all these executive orders to right the ship, and Congress is just sitting there.
Tim Burchett was talking about
hadn't codified a dang thing. That it's like, what are you guys doing? So as much as we are looking to Congress to get to work codifying Trump's executive orders, which they need to do, what I'm asking people in here in Tennessee is we've got to have that same mindset here at home. There should be an absolutely undeniable, voracious expectation on our Republican leadership to get stuff done now. Like, do it all.
This is the only opportunity we got, boys and girls. But the issue is they don't see it as an opportunity.
Let's start really looking at what it looks like. And I actually think I think they put a committee together to study how to operate state education without federal dollars, which is a step in the right direction. But those are the things we need to be working on right now. Since we've got the pending doom of the U.S. Department of Education, which is great, what does it really look like to function without the U.S. Department of Education, and without federal money? Because we've got to do both. It concerns me a little bit that Trump, he wants to close the Department of Education. That's great. Then he wants to start taking those federal dollars and dumping them into the states because, well, gosh, it'd be great if we could just give those monies back to schools.
Well, to just not take it in the first spot. It's like we don't take it anymore.
Yeah,
those federal dollars are no longer being taken from your state.
Do something else with the money.
Do something else with them. You don't need to give them to us so that we can lose 30% of it probably and then hand it back to you at 70%, which is what happens when you have these government exchanges, right? You pay in $100 in taxes. By the time they pave a road, you get 10 cents out of actual, productivity or product. And so it'd be better every time there's an exchange where tax money goes from one entity to another, about 20 or 15% of it seems to magically get lost. And so it never needs to leave to begin with.
Every bill this year dealing with illegal immigration should have passed. Period.
Just about every one of them. There's a couple of them that I was like, well, just because this is unworkable, or have you thought about the consequences of this or whatever else? But yeah, most of them, I'd say at least a good 80% of them. It's just
bills dealing with finally putting some kind of a check on the governor's authority in an emergency should have passed. Bills. I just saw 4 weeks ago. So last year we banned geoengineering, we banned weather modification, which is that's really starting to be paid. There's some attention being drawn to that across the country. So we ban it, but it's got no enforcement, so nothing happens. The governor's office has been mute on that conversation, and so now this year we have a bill filed by Monty Fritz to add enforcement. Well, that fails. Meanwhile, Florida has not only passed the ban, but has also now passed enforcement. And so while we're still here playing around, like pretending to do things and killing bills that actually enforce legislation that people want, other states are actually getting it done. My point is, back to the whole supermajority thing. I just don't understand why very simple things. I will tell you that geoengineering bill. So last year, that was the most acted upon, and just some quick numbers. We had a shorter session this year. So last year, we had 300,000 emails sent to the General Assembly through our website. This year, that was 250,000. But also this year, after 4 years of doing that online advocacy, we broke 1 million emails this year that have been sent through our website to the General Assembly. Last year, easily by a margin of maybe 10,000 emails, the most acted upon bill was that geoengineering bill. And this year, the civil liability for pesticide was number 1, and geoengineering was number 2.
That is crazy, because one of our top performing articles was related to geoengineering. So what I always
people care about that issue.
What I always tell people, and of course this is not a message that works for Rhino Republicans that are in office, that are always trying to figure out how you and I work and what our end game is. I'm like, I just want you to vote like your constituents want you to vote.
Do stuff.
Poll them, survey them, ask them what the heck they want, and then try to go up there and do it. It is that simple. It is that simple. And I try to, as the publisher of the Tennessee Conservative News, leave my personal opinions, except for like commentary on the reporting. Like if the base is split, we'll tell you the base is split. Some people say this, some people that. But if it's like an 80-90% issue, like we're pretty much just going to go in that direction. And I think that's where you are. I think that's where I have been. Like from the very beginning, it's like, is there not some mechanism by which you can determine what your elected, the people who elected you sent you here to do? And so, as many slings and arrows that has been thrown at you, and probably more at you than me, I don't know why, but more at you than me. I must be more likable.
I live closer to Nashville.
Yes, that's what it is. So I may be more likable. I'm more likable than lovable. I don't know. More cuddly. I don't know. But they don't seem to come after me as much. They do occasionally, but like I don't care. I don't bother me. But I'm like, that's it. That's the whole shtick. I agree with most Republican primary voters. We're pretty homogenous. You told me that's how you pronounce that. Not homogeneous, although that's how I learned it in science, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so either way, tomato. But nonetheless, like that is the whole thing. Like we just simply want the leadership in Tennessee to be as conservative as the Republicans who send them to Nashville.
Yep.
Whether you're a governor,
simple.
It's school board or county commission. But boy, it is so weird to see the disconnect. You've been kind to do this, and it has taken away from my beer drinking. I don't know if you're going to drink anymore. Beer drinking and or dart throwing or whatever it is that we're going to get into later tonight. So thank you for doing the work-related portion of this trip. Such as it is.
Happy to.
It's been slung together here. I've not done my best. We didn't even outline this. This is just what you're getting. And so I'll leave you with the last word, Mr. Humble. Send folks a message. Tell them what you think they need to know.
Gosh. Well, I mean, for sure, you should be. You should absolutely be subscribed and following the Tennessee Conservative News, and there's no question about that. And I think over the last 2 years, especially, I mean, it's just when you think they've got articles coming out every day, but the ability to follow what's happening in the legislature has been ramped up, and if it's moving through, you're going to see it in the Conservative News. So, we mentioned this earlier, but this year especially, we had so many wins in local Republican parties.
We did,
and I think that's worth saying, and it's worth making sure people know that there are. And I don't know, Brandon. Is there 20 now? Is it 30? I don't know what the number is. But there's a fairly decent number of local Republican parties out there that are really conservative and really trying to do the right thing. I mean, we saw the Republican Party this year, I mean, really come out hard and publicly go after, which you rarely see, representatives who will not freaking close these dang primaries. This insane caucus bill that they passed, that took away the rights of local parties. And this year actually was the first time I felt like I saw the Republican Party publicly come against what some of these Republican leaders were doing with some of these bills. And that's really good to see. We need to see the party hold elected officials accountable. Again, it's the difference of being a party for elected officials or a party for Republican voters.
Yes.
And unfortunately, what you see is elected officials, well, they want the party to support them, but that's not what the party is for. And so I really have seen a turn this year in a lot of local parties and the party at large in trying to take steps towards being more supportive of the Republican base, the voter, and holding elected leaders accountable whenever they're not following the policy positions that the Republican base is asking for. And so we need to see more of that. And so what I want to say is I would encourage all of you, if you have a local party like that is willing to put out resolutions and speak publicly about these policy positions, you need to be at those meetings, and you need to be supporting those local Republican parties. And by golly, you need to be getting out there and supporting local grassroots conservative candidates when they choose to put their name out there and run for office. Give some money and go knock some doors and make some phone calls. And the more we can engage with the more the base gets engaged with the local parties, the better off we're going to be statewide. Because I think it's one thing for Tennessee stands to hold elected officials accountable, and it's one thing for the Tennessee Conservative News, but it's another thing when the grassroots gets involved in the party and the party starts holding its own elected officials. When the party starts holding them accountable, that's when effective change is gonna take place. And so the party, I'll just close in saying this: the Republican Party is only as valuable as its ability to preserve and promote conservative values. And so if we're getting to a place in Tennessee where the party is willing to do that, support the party, and let's continue to build those local organizations across the state, because that's going to pay big dividends into the future.
I completely agree. And had I been on the SEC, if someone had told me how I was going to run my private organization, I would have taken away their Republican designation before they could even pass the bill.
Yep.
I'd have gotten together and said, well, I'm glad you're thinking about passing this bill, but you no longer have an R beside you.
You can run as an independent.
Jack Johnson, Lee Reeves. I'm sorry. Well, good luck. Go run as an independent, run as a Democrat, but you're not going to tell the party how we elect our candidates. Sorry. I'd have thrown that in at the end, but not everybody listens to my advice. Well, Gary, thank you for being here, for hanging out, for being a friend, for being an advocate, for occasionally someone to call and vent. I've often said this before, and I'll close with this. There's no one that I trust more in Tennessee to read a bill and tell me if it aligns with GOP primary voters on average than Gary Humble. He's got a remarkable talent for it. Too bad in the state of Tennessee you can't just take the bar and wave in. You have to go to college, unfortunately. Maybe you can find a college down in the Mediterranean or something. And a law degree.
And then they completely bastardize what you believe about the Constitution when you go to law school. So I'd rather stay out of all that.
Probably for the best. We don't need any more lawyers. Jody Barrett exception. Accepted. All right, guys. And Gino Bolso. We get too many lawyers up there. I can't name them all.
There are some good
conservative ones up there. All right, guys. Well, BL here with the Tennessee Conservative. My friend Gary Humble. Thank you for tuning in here. And if you like this, do follow us, subscribe anywhere you get your news. Until next time, it's me signing off. All right, it's in the can. That's an hour. What did we talk for?